Hey, what is up? What is up? I sorry for the uh, late join. Things were going a little bit late today, so today is gonna be a fun one. Uh, Let me just kind of go back to OBS here. Hold on, real second. Thanks for joining us today. Happy New Year, everybody, and lots of stuff cooking this year. Hopefully, you guys are all safe and sound. Hanging in there with all of the craziness that is happening around the world. And today we're gonna. I had a lot of people sending me um, a bunch of artwork on my Instagram channel. So we're gonna be looking at a couple of them and reviewing and giving some feedback. Doing some paint overs. Hopefully you can get something out of it. If it's not your work, at least you can relate to some of the pieces you're doing. Thanks for all of those sending me the work, and we're gonna continue doing this from time to time. It's a very fun exercise for me, but also hopefully helpful for you all. Uh, just some quick notes. I have a workshop in the beginning of February, starting on February 1st. Unfortunately, the critique spots are all filled out, but I still have spectator availability, so you can check out in the link below, or if you want to just kind of sign up for the mailing list, just join there, and then you're gonna be I'm gonna send out an email whenever we have new workshops coming, and we have a couple more plans for the next couple months. The next one is gonna be a creature, and stay tuned because I will be sending more information on that in the future. I'm also expanding my team at Lava Academy, or at Longi Academy, Lava for short. And there's going to be more people joining me on not only teaching, but also helping me out on the back end and some other things. So stay tuned for more. I'm super excited to continue investing on that. And thanks for the response to everybody. It's been super fun so far. I've also been doing something called Lava Weekly. So it's basically week challenges, and a lot of you have been participating, and I'm posting, and I've been sharing a lot of that. It's been super fun to see, and it's just another exercise that you can be doing every week, and hopefully just getting a team helps you without having to think of what I should be doing, this and that, and all of that. So um, just give me a thumbs up if everything is fine on your end. You hear me fine. Hopefully everything is good. All right, I saw a heart popping up. Yes, cool. All right, so let me just kind of gather some of the artwork. I'm just put here on Photoshop, and I will start sharing in a bit. In the meantime, today, if you guys want to send out some questions or thoughts or anything, I'm here to help. Right, I'm doing this basically for you all. So bring people together and join the community and all of that fun stuff. So let's all get better, improve, have some fun, and that's all this is about. All right, review, just get some of that work here on Photoshop. All right, all right, all right. Some of these. All right, let me just share my screen. So some of these things, I don't have a lot of context, right? So it's a little bit hard for me to be giving a full feedback, right? Like basically, I just got I just received an image. So not a lot of context here, but I'll do my best to just kind of very, very short. So a quick idea for checking proportions, or generic baseline, I guess, for hero characters. You can just measure from the crotch to the head, and that's usually roughly what you want to be seeing on the from the crotch to the legs. And this feels, of course, this is for shortening, and there's a camera, the legs are bent and all of that, but overall it still feels pretty right. Like if I were to kind of straight this down a little bit, the legs will be here, and then you can see how short it feels in compared to the torso. So that's the first thing, just looking at proportions overall. And you can see this is a very common mistake that people make, that you spend a lot of time modeling muscles and getting the tightness of the of the packs, and like the cloth here and these wrinkles and all of that, but then you kind of lose sense of the whole. And I think that's a very recurring theme for all of us, right? Like artists, that we tend to lose sense of the whole. So that's why I think it's important to be able to sketch, to work loosely in the beginning, and make sure you are sticking to those proportions that you set in the beginning. So a couple suggestions here would be, these hands also feel very big. And the way I'm judging this is just by the relationship of the face to the size of the hand. If you put your hands on your face, you can see that a full length of your hand is a little bit smaller than the full length of your head. So if we look at the size of like this hand here, is actually bigger than this head. So that tells me right away the hands are big, because the relationship from the head to the torso doesn't feel that bad. So it actually feels really natural. So proportions aside, I would just look at the actual pose. This is a very stiff pose, right? Like we are fitting this into a box. The center of mass is right in the middle. The both legs are kind of bent. Sorry, the both legs are bent as if just squatting down. So there is not a lot of action here. There's not a lot of movement. The only movement, if we just looking at, just trying to create some sort of abstraction here, the only movement is that we have a box kind of coming down, right? Like we have like this big form here. If you squint, look from far away, it just feels like a big box, and this box is just kind of going down, because now you see another box here. So it doesn't feel very appealing to the eye, and it's a little bit of an easy one to fix in a sense, because the actual modeling, the muscles, the anatomy, the presentation, the details, there's a lot of cool stuff in there, right? So I'm not gonna suggest any pose here, but just looking at even a more simpler pose like a contrapposto, or just kind of more kind of action line. If he's looking at this side, if he's looking up here in this direction, right? Like maybe we do something like this, and then you have like the arms kind of tilting a little bit more, and then he has, a little bit more of a gesture here. So kind of going this way, the legs. I'm just scribbling here, but basically I'm just trying to find, rhythm lines, and those rhythms is gonna, kind of create this flow. So I would, as I just did here, for example, I would just kind of maybe bring this whole, let me just try to do this without going too crazy, right? Like if we just kind of, if we were just to kind of do this, just by doing something like this, right? You can actually see, and forget about the legs, but just by doing this, you can actually see how much we are actually creating of a flow here, right? And then this sort of flow from this hand to these eyes, and then to the eyes here, you start creating like this pinpoint, the zigzag of emotion, right? Like, and of movement. And then same thing with the legs, right? Like imagine if the legs are, I don't know, so this is here, like the legs are kind of this way, and then this leg is a little bit more straight, so he's more like kind of more of a classical pose indeed, right? Like it just, there's like a bigger contrast to kind of having this inversion of the ribs with the pelvis here, building that sort of big momentum, just kind of looking up and then like lasering you and all of that, right? So that would be my initial thoughts for this piece. Overall, a good execution, some good stuff in here. I think João Santos, you are definitely doing some good stuff. Last comment, I guess, would be on some fine details here. For example, if you look at the actual shape of the mask, you start getting a little bit of like a rubbery, wobbly feel to some of these edges. And this image is pretty small, but because this is usually like a metal piece or some sort of like rubber gasket with some sort of laser, and I believe he has in some of these designs some sort of like metal, but anyways, like I would still kind of define a little bit more of like a harder edge here, and then you can get a little bit of like this, a little bit crispier, like a little bit sharper, And similar here, right? Like try to avoid having like this kind of wobbly shapes because it starts to feel a little bit like muddy and like clay. Another thing is some of these straps, right? They could be a little bit more straight, creating a little bit more of like a shadow shape here. So they go a little bit more, just by doing this, you can actually see how better starts to read, and it feels a little bit more rigid, right? Like this type of thing here, we definitely want to avoid at all times. So we want to play with some of these shapes, right? So we want to make sure like this is actually going straight, helping with the illusion that this character is, these straps are actually made out of like a true material. It's not really kind of attaching or watertight to the body, and you can actually see like some of these shapes here. These shapes that are created here really help kind of emphasize, and it even helps with pulling this out a little bit more, kind of opening up the chest. So that would be all around, lots of things that we could be talking about here, but these are the things that are kind of, grabbing my attention the most. Um, Hopefully that helps. But yeah, thanks for sending me this, João, and keep up with the work. I would suggest you doing more quick gesture poses, just grabbing the mannequin or even doing some quick sketches, looking at different poses, getting some of that gesture going, looking at other sculptors, statue collectibles, and all of that, all of those things. And I think you're gonna, start copying some of those poses, and I think you're gonna improve on that. All right. So let me just check the chat here real quick. Danielle Bell. Danny, my buddy Danny, 100% sure. Make sure you check out Danny. I'm also, spoiler alert, I will be releasing the first episode of my new podcast here on YouTube and also on Spotify pretty soon. And Danny is one of the, it's gonna be on the show. It's one of the folks that accepted, and we already recorded. So yes, Danny, it's a great reference for all of that work. He's brilliant artist. Also super nice. All right, let's just look at this piece here real quick. 19 Indica 98. Indica, sorry, I cannot click to kind of actually see your name. My bad, but this is you. So overall on this one here, let me just kind of get rid of like this white border here just to kind of help us with the contrast a little bit. Because otherwise it makes things a little bit hard for us to judge. All right, so that's a little bit better. So the thing I wanted to talk about on this one, well, overall, great model, great presentation, great lighting, great colors, great overlaps of pieces, and all of that. That being said, my thing today, the critique would be mostly around presentation and lighting and mood. So a couple suggestions here. First, I see you getting light coming from this lamp, which is kind of helping a little bit here. But then you also have like this same color kind of warm ring light coming from this side. And your key light also seemed to be a little bit warm, just hitting the face, kind of coming from this angle here, right? So you can see by the shape of the shadows. So in a way, I think we could be exploring some different compositions for this piece and playing a little bit more with like cool and warms, and also the directionality of some of these lights, because you're gonna get, and this is, it's gonna take a little bit of exploration, right? So let's just try some stuff together. So let's imagine that this light is actually blowing things a little bit more than what we have here. So let's use this as our first warm initial thought. So what I would do, let me just change this to screen. Oh, sorry, it's to light. No, what do I want? Soft light, maybe? Yeah, all right, so let's just do this. Let me just get a different brush. So we can just, I'm gonna do this very poorly, but hopefully you get the idea. So, all right, so one thing, for presentation, and this is done in movies and everywhere, we can fake a lot of stuff, right? Looks like here you actually have a light, and you are only using that single light source to illuminate or to kind of light up that character. I think that's great that you have a source light in the frame, and we can use that to help us expand and even model some of these other pieces in the whole character based on that light source. But it doesn't mean that you cannot add other lights to complement this, right? Like you see painters, illustrators doing that all the time. They say like, hey, we have like a red bounce light here, and then the bounce light is actually hitting everywhere, and it wouldn't be physically possible to have a lot of that happening. But regardless, in this is a presentation, this is an illustration, right? So we definitely want to make sure we are highlighting all of the hard work that you put into a lot of these models, right? So we can emphasize, we can cheat, and we can play a little bit with extra lights. I actually want to bring a friend of mine, Jan, um, to some of these live streams. He's one of the best lighters in the industry, and a lot of the lighting hacks and a lot of lighting philosophy I learned from him. So it'll be awesome if he can come and maybe we can light a character together or something like that. But anyway, so let's just kind of see what I would do, right? Like, so if I just start kind of bringing some of this red light up a little bit more. So imagine like this is actually going a little bit stronger, and then we kind of bring this from the bottom up, right? So then you get a little bit on the chin, a little bit here. Let me just kind of go very slowly. So you get a little bit of like this warm here, you know, just kind of going, and then here we can actually start carving out. Obviously, I'm painting, but you will be painting with lights, if that makes sense. So let me just change my eraser to something a little bit more subtle. So then we can just I can just start carving out some of these things. Obviously, again, you would be doing this with lights, and um, I'm basically cheating a little bit more than you would be able to cheat with lights themselves. But I guess I just want to make my point. So imagine that you have like this light source coming here, and kind of building this out. Maybe we kind of tone this down a little bit, something like that. Now you start getting a little bit of like a more of a focal point. All right, so our composition starts to look much more interesting because we are coming from this red light coming from this area here, right? Like, and you maybe not at the top, more at the bottom. So it starts revealing a little bit of the stuff on the back, and maybe some of these guys here. What we could do here, though, it's like our rim light. Let me just get another layer. Maybe our rim light here, kind of highlighting the shape of the character. Maybe we could use something, a little bit on the cooler side. We don't need to go like full blue and, start doing that. That could be one option too. But maybe we just go a little bit like desaturated, right? So it's a little bit like on the bluish side, but a little bit more neutral. So we can start carving out, maybe a little bit lighter, carving out some of these other pieces, right? So then we get a little bit of like a ring edge here. We get a little bit of like a highlighting, a little bit of like this these boots, and like kind of carving out some of this extra work that you put in. Maybe we don't want to go like super 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 crazy here, and then we can just really tone this down, very subtle. But I think it would still be cool to have some of the model kind of showing through some of that, right? So something like this, it doesn't have to be fully blue, right? Like, I'm not asking like, hey, let's just kind of paint like a rim light, like a like an outline on top of the character, the whole character. It can be just very very subtle, something that it doesn't even resemble like a rim light, or just kind of, it's more just kind of having like a fill or some sort of glow coming from the inside the environment, without really thinking about too much of the environment, right? Maybe this color can actually help us. Let me just get back to my blue a little bit. Maybe we can actually maybe add another point light here, very subtle, and you can actually carve in some of these details that it's very hard to see, that I know you spent a lot of time making the model and we don't even see in this presentation, right? So is there any way that we can be highlighting some of this work? Remember, like, presentation is what people will see on your model, so it's important that we don't you know, over like undershoot ourselves too much. So, maybe this red is a little bit too much and whatever. So we can kind of tone this down a little bit, start balancing things out. And on the top of that, we still want to emphasize our primary light here. So I would most likely still maybe keep your warm theme a little bit on the orange side, yellow side, and kind of maybe let me just kind of do something like this, and we just can kind of really tone this down drastically. Uh, just kind of give a little bit more directionality to your piece. And I like that you are fading that down to the boots. But you can see here that just kind of by emphasizing a little bit, some of these edges here and kind of keeping that theme a little bit more here. And obviously, like I said, right, like I'm doing this on Photoshop, but doing this with lights on the actual render, it's a little bit easier for me. But hopefully you get the idea that I'm not doing post processing, right? Like I'm actually painting with more lights and trying to create a more organic type of illustration. So, all right, so maybe this guy here, maybe this red here, we can actually tone down in some spots, or maybe we can use some of these stripes here that you see on the lamp, just to kind of create a little bit of a broken shape on the actual light. That's something that it's very common artists doing too. So instead of using like flat lights, they just kind of use the lights with some sort of like texture, or some sort of like cardboard on top of the light, in front of the lights, just to kind of get a little bit of like a broken sort of like shape. But yeah, we don't need to go like too crazy with it. But again, you get the idea, right? So basically, I'm just kind of shaping it up a little bit more. And the actual model itself, so I think that would help quite drastically if we were to just kind of turn everything on here. And if we just remove everything, you see how flat it looks right now. This is actually, maybe this is overdone a little bit, but just to kind of emphasize the point, you start to see how our composition now has one focus, another bright focus, right? And then because of the flow, we start going down and then we disappear, right? There's a little bit of like a movement here. The red is usually it's also coming from the arms, and it's kind of helping. It's helping with the composition on the lighting that we did as well. Another exercise would be to just kind of look at cinematic frames and important moments in films that you like, and try to kind of break it down and understand how they are using light to help with the composition. I'm not even talking about the background. I think the background, there's a lot of stuff that we could be doing here that is very, very subtle, but would help us, even bring this character more to life, right? Like, but I just try to cap the very simple thematic here, kind of moody and dark and whatnot. Uh, Last but not least, I would probably tilt this head down a little bit. So then our eyes would, like right now, the eyes are kind of looking in this direction. I would probably kind of look down to the lamp, like more like this, or even more like to the camera. So to the camera, I guess here would actually look pretty cool. Because right now it feels like it's not looking anywhere. It's not looking like where the lamp is going. It's not looking where it's pointing. It doesn't feel fully connected with the pose. So maybe just kind of either looking at the hand like the same direction, or looking at the camera like, hey, what's going on? Type of thing. Maybe opening up a little bit more of the shoulders. Maybe just twisting a little bit of the torso. Many different ideas. But anyways, so that's another one, and a uh, quick one, but hopefully that it's helpful. So good stuff, great work. You know, we gotta get into studying all of these other aspects of what we do, right? Because presentation, lighting is so important, and it can really destroy. Not saying that it destroy your work here, but it can really destroy or can really elevate your work so much. Obviously, the model comes first, but lighting, composition, colors, mood, all of that, right? Like it's very, very important, especially when you start presenting pieces in a more posed and kind of some sort of like setting. Cool. All right, let's see. Let me just get to the chat real quick. Hello, hey everybody. What's up, everybody? Loud and clear. Oh, you just heard my talk with Mike Azevedo. Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah, that was super fun. Yeah, huge fan of Mike. Was glad that he invited me to his stream. That was fun. Uh, are you planning on doing review videos? How can I participate in the future? So you can join here in the somewhere here should have a link to my Instagram group. So that's basically what I'm using to communicate with you all. Basically, you can just join there. The community on Instagram is free, and then whenever I before doing one of these videos, I just ask for work or portfolio, and I get some reviews, and I select a couple. So you can just do that, and next time I will pick more. Have you ever considered doing a character art course? Hey Burke, so I slowly started working on my new academy. Uh, Basically, I have a really very cool big vision of what I want to build, but doing very slow steps, increment steps. So basically, I have a workshop that it's more anatomy, construction, um, a little bit more advanced next month. I'm also recording a full demo on building a witch for those of you who are following me on Instagram. I'm building that. I'm also going to be releasing another workshop, live workshop, by April, roughly, about creature design and building creatures and all of that. So I'm slowly, you know, tapping into it, but eventually I want to build something super super nice. Um, Not sure if it's exactly the same style as you are asking, but I want to do something a little bit different than what everybody else is doing. I think I want to do something to complement whatever everybody else is doing. Maybe some sort of like long term academy type of training with workshops, boot camps. And you can see on my website, I call it classical training for the modern artist. So that's kind of where my head is at. So more on that soon. Thanks for asking. Hey Antonio, nice to hear that. Yes. Okay, cool. What do you send? Thanks for the feedback, with fan. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff. I appreciate it, Johan. Thanks for the kind words. Always light have to support storytelling. 100%. You got it. Perfect. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. All right, so we have a work here from Ernesto Gay. And maybe I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, so I apologize. But this is sort of a, red creature that reminds me Hellboy, that talks Red Hulk and all of that. But it's pretty cool. So obviously, this feels like a sketch or unfinished work by some of the design and some of the decisions that you have here on this skirt with just like a Tyler. That being said, there's a lot of cool stuff in here. I really like the gesture, and when we were talking about this type of composition, very effective, right? Like this is a very strong sort of imponent composition. Camera looking up, making the character feel big, characters looking down, great use of lighting, very very good. Getting this very hard triangular shadow shapes here, very awesome. I love all of that. um I like how sharp some of your shapes are getting here too, which really helps with the whole triangular composition. Love all of that. So when I'm looking at this piece, my comments go to stuff like some of the actual anatomy and some of the actual gesture of the arms and the hands, and even maybe some of the stylization of some of this anatomy too. There's nothing wrong with what I see here, but it doesn't feel very appealing to me. There isn't a lot of, um, I don't want to call it style. There isn't a lot of personality in in the way you are designing and kind of reshaping these muscles. And I'm using the word designing because, well, first, we are always designing here, but second, this type of face kind of like bags for, I see a little like distortion and kind of, yeah, some sort of like distortion, like bony structures coming out, like this sort of like rip, lips, all of these sort of things, full of personality on the face, right? And I don't see any of that on the actual body. How can we bring some of this personality on, stylizing some of these forms, getting some of these angular shapes? What can we do to bring all of this down into the actual body, right? Can we mimic some of these construction and some of these thoughts into the actual body? Can we get some of the anatomy a little bit more pointy here? Can we start designing a little bit more of some of like these deltoids, maybe a little bit in a way that it's uh, a little bit more gestural and a little bit more stylized in the same way that we have in the face? Can we get a little bit more edgy with some of like these curves? Uh, can we do a little bit of like the skin ripping and a little bit like stretching and kind of, using the same things that you're doing here in the face? Can we get a little bit of like scars going up here? Uh, I don't have a recipe exactly what I would like to see, but it just feels like you stitched human body, sort of like classical, like naturalistic physique onto a really nice creature. So it just feels very disconnected, right? So uh, even like some of the veins that you have in here, let me just kind of go back. Some of the veins that you have in here, can we go a little bit crazy with some of these veins? Is there anything that we can kind of bring some of these veins here and start connecting things? Uh, it's tricky to put in words, right? But that's kind of what I'm trying to portray when I look at this, and I feel like it's missing. Basically, stylizing more the anatomy. Look at folks like, for example, Ariel Olivetti. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing his name correct, but like illustrator, does a lot of comic art, painting acrylic, and all of that. But you're gonna see how he breaks his anatomy and how he really makes his characters sing through use of what we tend to call anatomy, simple anatomy, just like regular big muscles, but all of the muscles have personality. And I think the personality, it's really missing. The face looks great. Like, I just want to see a little bit more of that in the actual body. Uh, some of the actual choices here are also a little bit simple. So you have like this biceps coming here, and then you have like these forms, you know, too too shallow or um not strong, or I'm trying to find the right word, or not bold enough. What if we go a little bit more kind of a little bit more kind of exaggerated, same way you're exaggerating the zygomatic here? Is there any like things that we can be exaggerating here more, like some of these undercuts, or like some of these angles? Can we get a little bit more aggressive with some of these choices? uh, you know it, again, a little bit hard to put in words exactly what I'm kind of looking for, but it's one of those cases that it feels that it's a little bit, it's missing something, and it's very close to being like really cool. But I would start looking into uh maybe being a little bit more bold with some of these choices, maybe getting a little bit more tension in some of these areas, if that makes sense. um I not a huge fan of how you handle, this sort of like skirt here. I would, if you want to keep like this as a sketch, like even maybe just kind of paint it like dark red or something like that, just to kind of fade away. But don't draw a lot of attention like to these edges if you're not really gonna work on that. You could even be just kind of fading this like subtly with the lighting and all of that, and like just kind of drawing attention, something along those lines, right? So maybe we do this, and then you can kind of just kind of uh, oops, and then you can just kind of do something like that. So hopefully you get the idea, right? Like it's just kind of just basically trying to fade this away. And but yeah, overall I like what I'm seeing here. I just want to see a little bit more personality on the whole body. Last but not least, or last and least, not least, last. Anyways, this shape here, this form feels very cylindrical and it's way too simple. We definitely want to break up a little bit more of the forearm here and get a little bit more personality, right? So I would look into kind of breaking into some of like this undercuts. So then you have your big muscles here connecting from the arms coming in, and then you gotta go into some of these guys here, right? Definitely make sure you are playing all of those um, juxtaposition of forms and all of those overlapping forms. And yeah, that's all I have, I think, for this one. But good stuff. Uh, so thanks for sending me that. Hopefully that helps, and keep up. Good stuff. Let's see the chat real quick. Cool. More imperfections. Yeah, it could be seen as imperfections as well. Just get a little bit of water. I'm gonna go maybe like 20 more minutes because I gotta watch out the kids today. All right. Thanks all for tuning in as usual. All right, we got Marconi Bonfim Art. Marconi. Oh, you're actually in the chat. Hey, what's up, Marconi? Abocanhador Matraqueante Dungeons and Dragons. Right on. Awesome. All right. So I love some gory art, and I also enjoy doing, creepy stuff. I did a lot of that on my recent game that I worked on, Callisto Protocol. Maybe not to this extreme, but we did a lot of gory art and, a lot of creepy uh, monsters on that project. Um, so I can give a couple insights on when I look at this picture, what I would like to see done more, or maybe just give you a couple ideas on how to make things a little bit more interesting. Obviously, all of the things that we just mentioned about lighting on the other project, I think they can, pardon me, I think they can be applied here as well. So you can see that you have a single source of light, and it's not really highlighting a lot of your forms. So I think you can be modeling some of these shapes a little bit more with extra lights, like maybe enhancing some of these undercuts here. I see another silhouette, another undercut here, another gap. I think you could be modeling and highlighting a little bit more, even if it's very subtle, just kind of emphasizing a lot of these different planes and this different, like creating more depth on your picture. So that would be the first thing. So that aside, things that I like to see in creatures like that is you can go crazy with stuff like this, right? Like you have like a little mouth inside of like a tentacle connected to another mouth, or all of that jazz. But I think it's important to try to make them believable, and we usually make these sort of things believable by creating believable structures or supporting structures. So you could be, maybe enhancing a little bit more like some tendons here. Maybe you have a little bit of like a deep wrinkle here because this is kind of uh, shaping back. And then maybe you have another, like a little bit like of a chin here. And then you maybe have another tendon here. Again, very, very hard to just kind of giving you a recipe here. But the idea is that we need to be finding ways of supporting some of that structure. So imagine like a tendon coming here, supporting the shape of the mouth, right? And then maybe you go in here and then you have like some deep wrinkles here, like more wrinkles there, for example. Maybe playing a little bit more with the movement of the entire piece too, which you do have a little bit here, but this guy is actually going a little bit of against. So in this case, what I see at your picture, I think about this sort of like simple movement. So how can we make these extra heads emphasize this movement too? Is there any way that we can be kind of, not saying that all of the heads need to be pointing in this direction, right? Like that's not what I'm suggesting, but is there any way that we can do to kind of emphasize this sort of like angular movement here? Maybe this tongue could actually be going this way as well and kind of helping with the composition. Can we rotate this head a little bit more like this so it feels more like aligned with that movement of the piece? Can we bend a little bit more of this guys to kind of have more of a flow like this? This piece here on the floor, it feels very flat, so I would try to kind of create more of a curve like this. So then you start having like two movements in your entire piece, right? Like creating flow. So can we point this head up a little bit and disconnect from the floor? So then it gives more of a dynamic movement. You can see that just by kind of doing this and just pointing this up, it gives room for like this flow, this constant flow. So you go up, you go down, and then you go up again. A lot of these things are very hard to they come from analyzing, master's work or experimenting or just being focused on trying to learn these compositional ideas. um, and they are somewhat of a, comes from sensibility, I guess. It's not like anatomy. You look in the side of the shoulder and there are like recipes. This is how the shoulder looks. This is how many heads, you know this is what the shoulder girdle, is supposed to be, all of that. um, but it's just, it is the way you practice all of this is just looking at other masters work and trying to find this rhythm like lines, and reading about composition books and seeing an artist that you like, how they incorporate some of these movements. But hopefully that makes sense. The anatomy of this feet hand here, I think it could be a little bit more like it's just touching the floor. What if it is actually pressing against the floor? So then you start having a little bit more of a, splayed out like fingers, and like this fingers coming this way, this fingers coming this way. It would also help with the composition, right? And then you also get like the webbing here stretching from the fingers, for example, playing with tendons. Color wise, everything is pink and bloody. There's nothing wrong with pink and bloody, but it's missing more colors, right? Like we could be playing with yellows, we could be playing with blues, darker veins. There's a lot of veins here. We can be doing, purple veins, dark veins, playing with more yellow tones. Really going in and kind of sculpting more of like these faces, these eyes, and you know, we go into the mouths and we see a lot of teeth. Can we play with a little bit of like saliva kind of running down? Can we also give directionality to all of this blood? Is this blood coming because he's eating a lot of stuff? So can we have like this blood kind of dripping a little bit more? Can we have this blood dripping here and give more of the impression that is actually eating and just dripping rather than just kind of blood splat all over the place? Those are like, my initial thoughts looking at this, right? uh Hopefully that helps. But that's kind of what my head goes to looking at this piece. Hopefully you could take something out of that feedback. And thanks for sending. Appreciate it. Keep up. Keep doing. Keep going. All right, guys, gonna do this last one for today, and because I gotta bail. So if you guys have any questions while I do this last feedback, drop in the comment, and I'm gonna try to come back um, to the chat and see if you guys have any more questions, and answer some last minute questions. But uh, let's just look at this last piece here. So this is from Fogacart _. Sorry, I cannot click as I mentioned before, but thanks for sending me the piece. And uh, we have some cool stuff in here. So, not gonna repeat myself with the whole lighting composition and all of that, but there are a couple things here that I want to talk about lighting. But let's just look at the model first. Uh, let me see. First things first, let's just look at the structure. I think structurally, your head looks pretty convincing. It does look like it has like natural proportions, and it has believability in how you built that structure. Uh, the eyes do feel a little bit like the iris, especially, do feels a little bit too big. I think the eyes would look a little bit more natural if they are just a tiny bit smaller. And and I also feel like the eyelashes are not really helping much because they are so dark and so thin. It's not really reading how eyelashes to me. It's just reading like a very thin eyeliner, and I don't think that's what you wanted to do. And it's just giving a little bit of like a very weird shape of the eyes, and I think I would just try to kind of play more of that eye shape here. uh, but very subtle, right? Like, let's just kind of, so just pay attention to that in the future. This cloth piece, I think it's missing a little bit of thickness. I would build this with a little bit more thickness, so then it feels a little bit more. Um, there's a little bit more weight to the actual mesh, and then that would also give you like more contact shadows here, which is something I want to talk about in a little bit on the actual lighting. Structure wise of the face, I think it's cool. I think you are being a little bit uh, too subtle with some of this face with displaying changes. So if we look at the actual zygomatic here, obviously I'm not looking at a specific reference, so take this with a grain of salt. But I think regardless, like the actual plane changes from like going this way to this way, I think it's too smooth, and it's actually losing a little bit of the underlying structure. Like the way you are blending, like the eyelids, for example, which are probably this way, right? And then you're not saying that you need to draw a line on the eye bag. It's probably very smooth here as well, but it's just blending a little bit too much. It's almost like you are smoothing the entire surface, and it's actually missing that little bit of structure that usually happens when you are being too uh too fussy or too um how can I express in words, when you are going without a lot of confidence in those forms. So you don't know exactly what you need to be doing there. You don't truly understand some of those transitions. And then you start smoothing things out until it kind of looks okay. So I would recommend just kind of looking at models with this sort of facial anatomy structure and seeing how people actually develop like some of these regions. I would also encourage you looking at scans just to see how much you can actually see some of those structures, and be careful with not making everything too thin. And like, you look at your eyelids, same thing that I mentioned here on the headpiece, it's very very thin. Like the actual thickness of the eyelids are super thin, so we want to see a little bit more material there and thickness there. All right, so that being said, the colors are, maybe it's the actual lighting in the presentation, it's a little bit muddy. And muddy, by that I mean, I see you have like this sort of like tone here for, like, like your skin complexion, for example. And then I see you have like some other, like you're trying to kind of create some, variations within that color, but your variations are too even to the point that it's just reading as a sort of like muddy color. uh, I think you need to be a little bit more localized with the changes. Like your lips, for example, are reading very, very well. I think you just need to kind of expand that sort of like color development throughout the entire piece. Now, let's just talk a little bit about the rendering. Same idea here that you did for your cloth. I think it's too dirty in the sense that it's not really helping you read the whole character. So I would just simplify this a little bit. You can actually see that just me by simplifying some of these things here will start kind of drawing more attention back to the head, which removes a little bit of the noise. Uh, I'm not a huge fan of like this gray background. I don't think it's really complementing um, your character or really enhancing your character. Nothing wrong with gray compositions, but because you have like this yellow, sort of like lemon, very warm light coming here against like a very flat gray, and same on the other side, you have like a warm and sort of like warm light on both sides, kind of really flattening your piece. I would try to maybe make this one a little bit more neutral, just to kind of avoid going a little bit too too warm on both sides. And I see you kind of tipping a little bit towards lemon and green here, but I would just kind of either go a little bit more extreme or um, I don't know, something to explore, something for you to pay attention. Hard to give decisive instructions. Last thing I want to mention, I'm not sure where you are rendering this, but I see a lot of shadows leaking, and this could be the bias of your shadows. If this is being rendered on a real-time renderer, most likely the bias of your shadows are way too big. So reducing, let me just show what I'm talking about. You can actually see you have like a light source here, and then you are actually casting a shadow on the nose, but this part here is being fully lit still by the same light. So that means that the renderer, the light, it's not really tracing these areas as they are in shadow. So it's making them still lit because the bias of your shadows, or the distance of where the shadow starts after it gets hit, it's a little bit too far. So that creates what we usually call leaking. So technically, if you were to kind of remove a little bit of the leaking, you would start unifying some of these shadows. And that unification of the shadows, what would do to your piece, it would most likely give a little bit more sense of weight. Uh, and you would start separating, just by doing this, you can actually see how helpful that looks. And you're going to start seeing a little bit more of separation of the light and the shadow, and a little bit more precision. uh, Maybe this is just like a core here, but you get the idea. So you're gonna start seeing like this starts to feel a little bit more alive, and there's more weight to your whole image. The other point that I can see, or it could be too, that your shadows are way too big, or your light is way too big and the shadow is way too diffuse. It could be that too. So if that's the case, just shrink your light a little bit. Also, there is not a lot of occlusion happening here, and unless you have like a light blowing in this direction and the light rays can actually hit inside of this cloth, which is not the case by like looking at some of these shadows, although you do seem to have like a light source a little bit here too. Anyways, it shouldn't be completely removing all of the self shadowing here of the occlusion, or the contact shadows that you should have in here. Again, I don't know where you're rendering this, but hopefully you just get the notes and the ideas, right? So just having a little bit of like contact shadow here, uh, getting rid of like this light, these things leaking here, building a little bit more of like a strong pattern here of shadows. You're gonna start seeing that this is gonna start feeling much better. And I'm not really even talking about designing your lights even more, right? So just by doing this actually changed quite a lot. Let me just kind of work on some of these transitions a little bit. Um, I would avoid having like these very black shadows. I'm not actually sure how you're getting those black shadows here, but um, maybe you have too many lights. Like you see, like this is not getting lit by anywhere, but you should have some bounce coming from here. So maybe just bring a little bit of that here. Let me just try some stuff. Bear with me. So what if we do something like this? Let's actually change the color of this to something a little bit more like this. Let's see. Does that work? No, that doesn't even work, right? Because I think I'm going with like a lighter value than you actually have, so we won't be able to do that. But you know, it's gonna be a little bit. Well, I guess I could maybe do this, right? All right, here I go. Here I go. I was just kind of increase my tolerance a little bit. All right, maybe we do this. So, all right, we can do this, and then now we can actually paint some of these. This soft light. All right, so maybe we can actually start painting a little bit like this color. See, great. So we do this, and I guess I just want to do this. That sort of helps a little bit. Just giving a little bit more directionality. You know, same idea that we talked about on the other one. Let's just kind of do this. And another thing that you can be doing is kind of zooming out. I think this light source here that you have here is a little bit too white, so maybe we could introduce a little bit of color. Yeah, there you go. That, like, adding a little bit of color will definitely help you unify. And then on the background, lastly, maybe we just, you know, still go a little bit on the warm to kind of keep the warm theme, because otherwise it's probably a little bit too drastic if we go like very cool. You know, something like that. That would probably work. Yeah, maybe just kind of bringing the contrast a little bit more and introducing a little bit of low color, you know. Anyway, so something along these lines would probably be helpful. Same idea on the shadows. Your eyes are also like missing the shadows from the light, the contact shadows, you know, all around some technical issues here with the actual render, but cool. Hopefully that helps. Hey, we got my friends from New Masters Academy joining the chat, and you know, don't know who joined, but huge fan of all of you folks, and love that you guys are here. They do amazing work. Being a fan and a subscriber for the longest time, and I'm glad to see you guys around. Thanks for chiming in, my friend. And that's it for today, guys. I think I'm gonna stop here. If you miss the beginning, go back. This is gonna stay here. Go back. We looked at a couple different models here. We did a lot of composition. So the team for today was, let me just kind of go back to my OBS here. So the thematic for today was just mainly composition and lighting. That ended up, you know, being very fun and very, very eye-opening for some, hopefully. And yeah, I'm happy to do more of these in the future. Next week, I'm gonna probably do a different live stream. It's not gonna be artwork review. It's probably gonna be more sculpting, because, you know, let's sculpt together. But maybe next month, maybe in like 2-3 weeks, we can do another art review. But anyways, just kind of stay tuned on the Instagram channel, and I'm gonna keep you guys up to date. For those of you who are joining right now, I have a workshop in February. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, also sign up. I'm gonna keep you guys up to date. Like I said before, I have a couple workshops coming for the next couple months. Some big news in the next couple months. So thanks everybody for joining, for all of the support. I really appreciate all of you commenting on all of the new videos. You know, been trying to, you know, to give back to the community that gave me so much throughout all of these years. If there's anything you want to see next, just drop in the comments in some of the videos. And that's it. What's up from New Zealand? Live talking about your beginning of your career. Yeah, I'm planning on actually doing a video of my whole career for those of you who haven't heard about that yet. But yeah, I'll do one of that. Hey, Kawe, massa, unreal. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for chiming in and checking and joining. And catch you guys on the next one. Cheers.